Hey, good morning. Happy Monday to you. Brock Morgan here. Yesterday was Palm Sunday, and so I just want to talk with you and fit as much information as I can into this little short video about what Palm Sunday really is all about, because it's a really important day of our calendar year. And so what I want to do is jump into John chapter 12 and look at it together. And we'll just start right into the passage. Like, we're just going to get right into it. So here it is. John chapter 12. Here we go. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. So here's the thing. If someone ever raises you back to life, it'd be a good idea to throw him a party, which is exactly what Lazarus' family in Bethany are doing. Just a week before this, Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead, and the word is getting out about, like, they already were thinking this is the Messiah. Jesus really is the promised one who will come and do exactly what he said he would do. He would heal our land, and he would heal our brokenness, and he would bring God back to us, and he would restore his kingdom. But they don't quite get exactly what that means, as we're going to find out in just a moment. But they throw this party, and the story continues in rest of verse 2. Here it goes. Martha served while Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took about a pint of pure nard, an expensive perfume. She poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Now, this is a scene. This is a major scene. Mary takes this expensive perfume, which is about a year's salary, and pours it on his feet and then wipes his feet with her hair. Now, this is Mary, this is probably Martha's sister, Lazarus' sister. This is not Mary Magdalene or Mary, mother of Jesus. This is a different Mary, and she is clued in. Like, she has been following Jesus. She knows who Jesus is. She knows he's the Messiah. He's the Christ. He's the promised one. He is God in the flesh, and she is compelled to worship him. I don't know if God was, if he was in the room, if you were in the room with him, how you would respond. For Mary, this is like the best thing that she could think of. And the story continues as the onlookers are watching her worship, and this is how it goes. Verse 4, but one of his disciples, it says, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, he objects. Look at that. He objects. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It's worth a year's wages. Now, he did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was paid in it. So here Judas is the one who's getting ready to betray Jesus and side with the enemy. He literally is just lining his pockets these 3 years following Jesus with the money that's coming in for the ministry. And it continues. Jesus says, leave her alone. It was intended that she should save this perfume for the day of my burial. So, like, she's clued in. He's going to die. Like, she is clued in, like all of these people should have been clued in, that he is going to go to the cross. He's going to suffer for the sins of the world. He literally is going to become sin. A later writer of the New Testament tells us. And so literally, Mary's clued in. Everyone else seems to be clueless. And he says, you will always have the poor among you, but you will not always have me. Meanwhile, a large crowd of Jews found out that Jesus was there and came, not only because of him, but also because they wanted to see Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. So the chief priests, so these religious leaders, get upset, and they've been upset this whole time. And they made plans to kill Lazarus as well. So they're plotting to kill Jesus. And now they're like, Lazarus, This is too convincing. Like, he is evidence. We need to get rid of the evidence that Jesus is raising people from the dead. And so we're going to kill Lazarus as well, for on account of him, many of the Jews were going over to Jesus and believing in him. And it says the next day, the great crowd. So there was a big crowd gathering in Bethany to see Jesus and Lazarus. But now there's this great crowd that had come for the festival, Passover. They had heard that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. So they took palm branches and went out to meet him, shouting, "Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel." See, these people are convinced that Jesus is God in the flesh. They're convinced of it. They've been doing the math. They've been reading the prophecies. And what exactly is the math? Well, Daniel actually gives this incredible math. Some of us are listening right now and we're skeptical, and then some of us are just wide open to Jesus and we're experiencing him in life-changing ways. I get it. And we see both in this story. But Daniel, hundreds of years before this, tells us what's going to happen. And the Jews at this point are reading. They're faithful readers of the prophecies. And this is why they believe Jesus is God in the flesh. And the passage says this in Daniel chapter 9, verse 25. He tells us of the coming anointed one, the coming Messiah. And he says this, "No one understand this. From the time the decree goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem," so they're in captivity, Daniel is in Babylon, just Jerusalem is destroyed, and he's like, there's going to be a decree. He's prophesying, there's going to be a decree, and from that, when that decree goes out to rebuild Jerusalem, until the anointed one, keep reading with me, the ruler comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. So we're going to do the math in just a minute. Those of you who are math people, you're going to love this. Those of us who are not math people, like me, but it's super cool. So hang in here with me. First, he says this decree. And the decree is actually in Nehemiah. Years later, there's this amazing guy by the name of Nehemiah. And he works for the king. In fact, he's with the king every day. And the king loves him. And the king notices that Nehemiah, his eyes are all red. He's obviously been crying. And he's like, "Nehemiah, what's going on?" And Nehemiah tells him, like, I can't just kind of hang out with you. And like, this is awesome. I have a job. I'm working for you. And this is great. And we have a great relationship. But I can't do this. Like, I have a heavy heart over, while Jerusalem lays in ruins, I can't just sit by. Will you give me papers? Will you write letters? Will you give a decree so that I can make safe passage back to Jerusalem and start rebuilding, and then get the lumber and all the supplies without people bugging me? I'll have the papers. I'll have the decree from you that I can do this. And King Artaxerxes says, yes. Now remember, Daniel's prophecy says that when this king gives the decree, what year is this? It tells us in this verse, in the month of Nisan, which is March, in the 20th year of the king. So we know, because we know history, that King Artaxerxes begins his reign in 465 BC. 20 years later, he gives this decree. And we do the math. We go back to Daniel, and I want you to see what Daniel, back to these numbers. Look at the red with me. He says, there will be, from that time the decree is given, which is 444 BC, there will be 7 sevens and then 62 sevens. So 7 sevens, so it would be 7 7-year periods. So that's 7 times 7, 49 years. That's when Jerusalem will be rebuilt. And then he says, after that, there'll be 62 sevens. So 62 7-year periods, which is 434 years. Add the 434 years to the 49 years, and you have 483 years. So he says, from issuing this decree, you can count it off. 483 years, and those years are going to add up. And when those add up, be looking for the Messiah, because the anointed one is going to come. So what's interesting is that the Hebrew calendar has only 360 days in a year. So you kind of have to do the math by 360. So 360 days, and you multiply it by the 483 years, and you end up with the number of 183,880 days. And what's interesting is that this thing, when you take March 5th, 444 BC, which is when the decree is given, when Artaxerxes gives this decree, and you add 183,880 days, you end up with a date of March 30th, 33 AD, which is Palm Sunday, when Jesus, if you keep reading this passage in John, rides in on a donkey, and they put the palm branches down, and they declare him king, and they worship him, Hosanna, Hosanna, and the people know who he is, and they worship him. And it's amazing. These people have done the math. They know who Jesus is. Now, the crazy thing is they somehow dismissed the rest of Daniel's prophecy. They wanted God to come into flesh and to get rid of his enemies, get rid of their enemies, and he will, but it's not time yet. In fact, the prophecy tells us, if you keep reading in Daniel, these numbers, it'll be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. And then it says this, look at the red with me. It says, it will be rebuilt with streets and a trench, but in times of trouble. And that's actually happened. That prophecy came true. It was really troubling. They were trying to build the walls back up and rebuild Jerusalem. It was difficult. And then he says, after the 62 sevens, the anointed one will be put to death and will have nothing. So these people, Jesus goes into Jerusalem. They are singing and worshiping, kneeling before him, placing palm branches. You are the King. You are the Son of God. You are the Christ. You are the promised one. They are worshiping him. They are screaming and rejoicing at the top of their lungs. And then just a few days later, these same people are screaming at the top of their lungs, crucify him, right? And you go, man, how could they do that? They say that he is God, and then they make decisions and choices, and now they're saying, kill him. Well, we do this kind of stuff all the time. One of my favorite quotes is by a man by the name of Brennan Manning. And Brennan said this, the greatest single cause of atheism, people who don't believe in God, in the world today, is actually Christians. Christians who acknowledge Jesus with their lips, but then walk out the door and deny him by their lifestyle. That is what an unbelieving world simply finds unbelievable. So yesterday was Palm Sunday, an amazing day. And I want to be like Mary. I want to be clued in. I want to worship. I want to know who God really is. I want to do the math. And I want to be consistent. And I want him to work in my heart this week. And my prayer is that he would work in your heart too. That you would open yourself up to him and you would respond to the reality of who Jesus really is. And you would join Mary and all the others in opening our lives to this amazing, amazing God named Jesus. And that you would worship him this week. Easter is coming. Easter's coming. On Easter, he raises from the dead, again fulfilling more prophecies. And all these Jews turn back to the risen Jesus and believe, and it's chaos. Read the book of Acts. It's amazing. My prayer is this week is that you would open yourself up in a brand new way to Jesus. Thanks.